Look, while the right to protest is an important, it's fundamental to democracy, I think most of us are now fed up with the constant protests against Israel. It's not just that they've been running in Sydney and Melbourne almost every week for a year with all the attendant disruption to people going about their normal lives. It's not just the expense, although the cost of policing dozens and dozens of these protests is literally running into many hundreds of millions of dollars. It's the fact that being against the Middle East's only liberal democracy, the only country in a region where women and gays have equal rights, and effectively to stand in favour of Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran, all of them Islamist theocracies, well, I reckon that's pretty much un-Australian. Today, even Bill Shorten was saying that the Victorian government, the Victorian Labor government, should introduce a permit system to stop these perma-protests in Melbourne. Now, it's true that in all of these protests, there's been a large group of professional disruptors, people prepared to take to the streets on any left-wing issue, be it anti-Israel, Extinction Rebellion or Black Lives Matter. And there's some who too genuinely want to see an end to violence, even though any ceasefire now would be a victory for terrorism. But there's also a lot of recently arrived migrants in these protests who seem to have brought their old hatreds to their new country. Let's remember the pledge that all new citizens take. They say, "I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people, whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey." There's no democracy and there's no liberty as we understand it in Gaza, on the West Bank or in Iran. Then there's a citizenship test, the 5 questions that people get about Australian values that all newcomers are supposed to pass. And yes, question 6 in the official practice test gives peaceful protest as an example of free speech. But the official practice test also makes clear that Australia is a secular society with equal rights for all, where people can freely vote in elections and where disagreement must be peaceful and respectful. Well, there hasn't been too much respect shown on our streets for Australian Jews who report antisemitism at unprecedented levels. There hasn't been too much respect in various mosques for Jewish Australians.
To the invading Jews we say, by Allah, the day you will be kicked out of Palestine is coming. The trees will speak, the stone will speak, and they'll say, "O Muslim, O believer, there is a Yahudi behind me, come and kill him."
صفة من صفات اليهود هي أنهم شعب متعطش لسفك الدماء.
Now, the last thing I want to see is a change to our non-discriminatory immigration policy. Australia is rightly hailed as the world's most successful immigrant society. But the only way a diverse, multi-ethnic society with no majority religion can continue to flourish is with a strong civic ethos and a deep commitment to Australia and its values. That's what we had in the decades after the Second World War as our immigration program shifted from the British Isles to continental Europe and eventually on to Asia. There was a strong focus on integration into what we all thought then was the world's best country. One flag, one set of values, and a genuine love of this country we're so privileged to share. That was all before, though, our schools and universities started teaching the black armband view of Australian history. Our government started flying 3 flags instead of 1 Australian flag, and every civic event begins with an acknowledgement that it's some people's country more than others. With rights to live in the best nation on earth comes responsibilities. It can't all be taken, and we can't have a situation where, as Tony Abbott said last night, people migrate here to live in Hotel Australia rather than join Team Australia. It's telling that there's no public mourning 13 years ago for Osama bin Laden when he was killed, and like the recent outpouring of grief for the dead terrorist Nasrallah. Multiculturalism has gone too far when it extends to celebrating terrorist leaders on the streets of Australia. If we do not cut out this cancer, it will metastasise. In the end, this will be what destroys the country we love.